Hello and welcome to the latest interview in the Future Energy Perspective series, brought to you by Power Engineering International and in collaboration with Siemens Energy. In previous episodes, we focused on energy storage, hydrogen and clean fuels. This time around, we're examining carbon capture and utilization, which is not a new topic, but it's a topic that at the moment has a significant amount of action and momentum behind it. To help explain why that is, I'm joined by Daniel Hofmann, who is Director of R&D and Portfolio and Product Line Management at Siemens Energy. Daniel, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Carl, for having me.
You're very welcome. In your article about carbon capture and storage, it focuses heavily on the Net Zero Tside power project, NTZ. What is it about this plant that you that makes you so enthusiastic, that you're so passionate about?
Well, for me, it's one of the plants that is really, really highly likely to materialize. I mean, we have a great plant, of course, technology-wise. I mean, it's from us. We're at least the planning up to now in the FEED study that we're doing. We have with BP a great customer who is committed on carbon capture, on decarbonization, and part of it would be carbon capture. And of course, Net Zero Tside is located in one of the clusters in the UK, and is one of the very few projects, actually one of the 8 projects that made it forward into the next round of the Repowering UK funding call. And it's the only power project in there, the only power project with fossil fuels and carbon capture. So I'm really looking forward to that project, and I see a really high likelihood that it will materialize. And I think it would be a great milestone if we can build that big power plant in Europe with carbon capture and show that the whole chain that is established for that Net Zero Tside plant will be shown and working.
You mentioned there that it's part of an industrial cluster, and indeed, as you mentioned, one of several in the UK. Do you think that approach, that industrial cluster approach of carbon capture being part of a wider initiative rather than an isolated project, is a key factor in why CCUS is now finally making some significant progress?
Absolutely. I mean, that approach and having those industrial clusters, trying to collect several emitters together, and it doesn't have to be CO2 emitters, it could be other forms of usage as well. But here, focusing on the CO2 is a really, really good point. I mean, you see it all the way through industry that not everybody is trying to get the whole value chain built by themselves. I mean, it's completely overstretching your own abilities normally. I think it's much more worthwhile if everybody is focusing on their core competencies and partnering, which is another trend that we see in the industry. So in this industrial clusters where you build the infrastructure together, or you provide the infrastructure from a state or from another company that is building that infrastructure, and then everybody who is capturing CO2 can connect to that infrastructure and use it. I think it's an absolutely important key milestone to really get that done. And we see it all over the world where those clusters are developing.
You mentioned key milestones, Daniel. We have the milestone of COP28 coming up this year, and the president-designate has already come out as a key advocate of carbon capture. Do you think you'll see another greater shift in momentum towards carbon capture on the back of, in Dubai, and on the back of things that are agreed in Dubai?
I really hope so. I mean, I really hope to see a move forward on decarbonization of all industry, power industry included. Whether it will be particularly pushing carbon capture forward, I don't really know. I mean, he is a new player, at least in his new role. But if I just look at the speech at the Petersburg Climate Dialogue, he was clear that we really need to do something about the emission of the fossil fuels. And therefore, I see that there will be a push. I hope that it will be really taken up on the agenda and will be high on the agenda, and that we get all the support that is needed. And I would say not only for carbon capture, but for all decarbonization efforts that we see worldwide. We need to do something.
We've talked about the Tside project, but just could I ask you briefly, that's one of several projects that Siemens Energy is involved with, and in relation to carbon capture. Another one is Keadby. So I just wondered if you could explain a bit about Keadby 3, Keadby 2, which you're involved with, and how that differs, if it indeed it does, from the Tside project.
I would say the differences are small. I mean, first of all, we have KITB2, which is a classical combined cycle power plant based on HL technology without carbon capture. We're currently discussing with the customer on how that could be converted to hydrogen, if at all. But then we are discussing KITB3. We have done another feat with, again, a customer who is highly behind the decarbonization efforts with SE. So the plant itself is very similar to Teesside. Again, it's a single gas turbine with carbon capture, more or less the same technology in it. Obviously, boundary conditions are a little bit different, but it's located in the Humber district, and therefore would have the same connection to the Northern Light project if we continue there. So I really hope that they'll make the next cut. The UK is committed to continue with the track 1 and another track 2 in building up the decarbonization all across the UK. So I really see that project on my list of very, very high potential projects moving forward, and it would be great if we can continue with it.
You mentioned there about how the UK government is very proactive in carbon capture and various other decarbonisation initiatives. I'm wondering, are you seeing that? Which other European countries do you think are on a par with the UK for carbon capture, and which other ones do you think you might see some momentum building?
Well, currently, I would say all of the Scandinavian countries, Belgium, Netherlands, Denmark, they are moving ahead with carbon capture. They're moving ahead with decarbonization, and carbon capture being one part of it. There, I would see a lot of push in realizing first carbon capture projects in the near future. Some of them are currently being built. Generally, I would say all the countries that are strong in oil and gas, like, for example, UK and Norway, are on that track as well. I mean, they have the storage capabilities and a lot of knowledge on how to handle gas transport, gas storage, and maybe they can reutilize the old storage, the old wells when they're used. So there I see a lot of push. Finland and Sweden are very strong in biomass with carbon capture. So I see something moving there as well. So I would say there is, at least in the northern part of Europe, a strong movement. In other parts, I would say it's currently building up. Germany is rediscussing carbon capture and what to do with all the industry emissions. So I would say there is a lot of discussion there, but the first movers I would expect more in the north.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of those proactive governments, obviously that's happening at a national level. So I wonder, is there a need for something to happen at a pan-European level? And if there is that happening already at a European Commission level, or is that something you would like to see happen, or would like to see more of it happening?
I mean, naturally, a lot of people look at the US and the Inflation Act and the sheer amount of money that is available there. So, of course, not anything that is available that can support building those projects would really help. On the other hand, I would really wish for clear rules and stable rules across Europe. That would be something that could progress all the different projects really, really very much. Financial benefits have to be there. I think there actually the EU is already on a really good track, because the ETS is always going up. The tendency is always going up. We still don't have too many. We still have too many free emissions there, but that is going to cut down. And I think the stability is the most important part there. We're investing a lot of money into those projects, and therefore you need the stability. You need to make sure that the rules stay clear and concise over several years, that you really can invest with limited risk. So from that regard, yeah, we need the rules. We need to have an agreement across the EU how we're going to go forward, but it doesn't have to be the same speed for everybody.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned the US there, and the effect that the Inflation Reduction Act is having on as an attraction for investment. Carbon capture has often, for the last at least 10 years, been said by many as being too expensive. But we are now at the tipping point where the technology is so essential, it's a kind of no regrets investment, that it needs to happen. And we can work out who's going to pay for it and how they're going to pay for it. But do you think we're at that point where it's just too essential to not be a key part of the decarbonisation mix?
Honestly, I mean, decarbonization will cost money. It's more the question, can we afford to not pay the money? Because if you look at any of the studies, I mean, the cost of not doing decarbonization will be much, much higher, unfortunately, further in the future. So it's one of those difficult questions where you have to pay for something now, it will only happen in the future. I don't think that carbon capture, if I talk specifically about carbon capture, is too expensive. It's one of the currently available at scale employable technologies. And if I just look at the carbon prices, for example, in Europe, I think it's at the brink of being net positive. So therefore, I think carbon capture is already there. It can be applied today. And we just have to be clear, there is no silver bullet for decarbonization. We have to pull all the levers from renewable energy saving, hydrogen, and of course, carbon capture to make decarbonization happening. And therefore, I think carbon capture will have its play. It's an application that we can do today. And therefore, I think the price is very acceptable.
Thank you, Daniel. It's been a fascinating conversation. Many thanks for your time today. I'm sure it's a conversation and a topic we will revisit. But for now, Daniel, many thanks for joining me today. This has been a Future Energy Perspectives interview. The rest of the interviews, plus all the articles in the series, are all available on the PEI website. But for now, thanks again to Daniel, and we will see you very soon. Goodbye for now.
Thank you. Goodbye.